Don't worry about it. Bring the text up and look at the camera and start reading.
All right, let's see what happens. I wasn't quite at the right place.
That's what you say. Take one or whatever you can do.
Take one.
Right. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're lined up, do a take one.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah. So we're here celebrating.
No, take one.
Take one.
So take one.
Take one. This is the weekend of September 7th. This is a special anniversary for the Sutton family because this was the weekend, September 7th, the day on which a copy of John Sutton's will was recorded in Ware County, Georgia. Now, they'd already recorded a copy in Duval County, Florida, which is where the family ended up and where John died. But there was also a copy that was supposed to be recorded in Ware County, Georgia, because that's where John's family lived. And they wanted to make sure that everybody knew that after John was gone, that the family was going to belong to William Adams, who was going to make sure they made their way to freedom. But they didn't want the family to find out too soon. So this was the day. This is an excerpt from the last will of Lucy Sutton. On the day on which William Adams went into town to record that copy of the will. Chapter 4, recorded in the county of Ware, state of Georgia. The task was simple enough, but not necessarily easy. William Adams had ridden into the county seat of Waresboro alone, leaving Lucy and her family at his farm, away from snooping eyes. The Suttons were happy to stay there, spending as much time as they could with the Adamses before they had to say farewell for the last time. Ware County was filthy with Suttons. John's brothers and their relations were scattered throughout, and there was no telling what might bring any of them into town on any given day. And the Suttons had a way of sharing information, messages, and gossip that flew faster than telegraphs. So recording the duplicate original of the will in Ware County with the clerk unnoticed would require stealthy maneuvers. William Adams tied up Red, his little roan quarter horse, near the general store, across and at the opposite end of the main street, such as it was, from the county clerk's office. He went into the store, purchasing the sack of flour that his wife Sarah had requested, forcing himself, against his loquacious nature, to keep chat with the grocer, Sam Gold, to a minimum. He hoisted the bag onto his shoulder, and rather than packing it onto his horse while he went to the clerk's office, he took the bag with him, thinking it would make a suitable prop if anybody saw him and wondered what he was doing in town today. Things went smoothly at the clerk's office. William put down the sack of flour and sat on a wooden stool. He reached into the waistband of his pants and pulled out the envelope that the lawyer Gregory Yale had made for the duplicate original of John Sutton's will. The envelope was only slightly worse for wear than when William had last paid attention to it at St. Isabel, when Yale had given it back to William, who broke the red wax seal that Yale had used to protect it when he'd first drawn it up in January. The envelope was creased, and there was an oily stain in the lower right corner, from what William didn't know, but he was relieved to see that when he took the two long sheets out of the envelope and unfolded them, that the stain hadn't seeped through the envelope and onto the duplicate of the will itself. The clerk, Barton Smith, a thin, taciturn man with greasy, thinning hair and yellow teeth, didn't ask many questions, taking the will, putting it on a stack with other notices and documents to be recorded in the county's official records, and charging William $1 for the service. He handed William a receipt and wished him a good day, as Smith was interrupted by an incoming telegraph that he turned to, one of the other services he offered to the Ware County community for a fee. Receipt in his pocket and his work complete without incident, except for a quick greeting to the Methodist minister, Calvin Appleby, whom he passed outside Doc Samuel's office. William had taken the reins off the hitching post and had his left foot in the stirrup to mount when he pictured the sack of flour sitting on the floor back at the clerk's office. He thought for a moment about riding back over there, but rather than being seen hitching his horse there, he walked the 30 yards back to the clerk's office, making a waving gesture to the clerk Bart Smith, who was still busy doing something with the telegraph machine, as he hefted the flour back onto his shoulder and headed toward the exit. As William pulled the door open, it gave quickly as someone on the other side was pushing the door in toward him. "Bill Adams, what are you doing here?" was what William heard as he stepped back to let the man in. Hey, Ab, how you doing? William asked, ignoring the question and trying to continue out the door without making conversation with John Sutton's brother, Absalom. Doing all right. Nothing much to complain about, Absalom said as William moved out of the way. Nice to see you. Say hi to the family, William said, moving quickly across the threshold. You do the same, Absalom said, passing into the clerk's office. William pulled the door shut behind him and picked up his pace, happy to have avoided more conversation with Absalom. He was in the middle of the street, halfway back to the horse, when he heard the clerk's door creak open behind him, followed by quick footsteps on the wooden sidewalk, accompanying Absalom's voice. Hey, William, wait up! Let me talk to you a minute. William stopped in his tracks, the flower heavy on his shoulder. He turned to see Absalom running toward him. William was struck by the way Absalom's gait had a hunched-over, shuffling pattern that immediately called to William's mind the similar stride that John Sutton had when he'd been healthy. William felt a pang of nostalgia about his old friend, whom he'd last seen slowed by illness, trying to make himself useful back in Black Creek a week or so before John finally yielded to age, time, and in the end, death itself. Don't have much time, Ab. Got to get this flower back to Sarah. You know how women be when they need something. Don't I know it, Absalom said, touching his ear. I'm still smarting from the way Katie Ann boxed me when I come home from drinking over the Callaways last week. William forced a smile, anxious to just leave without rousing any suspicion. So, Shad tells me you got every last one of John's niggers, Absalom said. I didn't have nothing to do with John's decisions, William said testy. He left them all to me, fair and square. I didn't say nothing about nothing not being fair and square, did I, Bill? Absalom asked. No, you didn't, Ab, William responded, keeping his temper in check. It just seemed like Shad wasn't too happy when he heard the news. Well, fair and square is fair and square, Absalom said, winking one eye at William. William gave a quick nod to fair and square and shrugged his shoulders. What I want to know, Absalom continued, is what you're going to do with all them niggers over at your place. And you ain't got that much land to tend. You ain't got much space for you and your family and all of them, too. Only slightly offended, William suppressed an urge to defend the size and quality of his farm, more anxious to get out of this conversation before he said something he might regret than angry about the slight. I got what I needed, Bill answered. Was Absalom's response. Then William noticed Absalom's smile, looking over William's shoulder. The heavy sack on his left shoulder, Bill turned his head slightly over his right to see what had garnered Absalom's attention. Coming up from behind was Absalom's brother, Moses Sutton. Hey, Bill, Moses said, patting William on the shoulder without the flower. Hey there, Moses, William said. Moses had always had a quirky way of doing a little off-track things. Moses had always had a quirky way of being a little off-track from any conversation. It unsettled William, so William was braced for anything. The two brothers took positions in front of and behind William so that William had to turn to carry on a conversation with both of them and see both their faces at the same time. Absalom spat tobacco juice on the ground and cleared his throat. I was just asking Bill here, what's he going to do with all of John's niggers? You got, what, a dozen of them? Some bucks? Probably ain't got no decent training for field work. He spat again. John wasn't really no good at running a farm. Then you got some comely bitches, be good for breeding. William's nose wrinkled involuntarily as he noted a thick brown dribble of tobacco spittle in the hairs of Absalom's scruffy beard. But don't none of it make no sense on William's little farm unless Billy here trying to buy up some land and grow his farm. You trying to expand, Bill? Moses asked. No, William said. I got "He just come from the county clerk's office," Absalom interrupted, looking past William to Moses. Moses chimed in, "You been sneaking and buying up some land, William? I heard tell John left you his livestock and such. He must have had 400 head at least. You selling to buy up some new land so you can put them niggers to work? Is that what you been doing at the clerk's office? You recording some new deeds? I know Parker out your way was looking so he could sell and buy up some land in Florida." Absalom picked up Moses' point. "Smartest thing to do right now, seems like. Young President Hickory Polka is following in old Hickory Jackson's footsteps, giving away Florida land dirt cheap, trying to clear out them Seminoles and runaway niggers. Get some real civilization going on down there. Best way to make some money right now is buying up land on the other side of the St. Mary's. Chad just bought up 100 more acres down in Duval County, right up next to where John was grazing his cattle. Chad asked me to come down and check out the notices at the clerk's office for more acres for sale down here and up here too." William froze, knowing that one of the jobs of the clerk, in addition to recording wills, was to post on the board bills and advertisements, notices of runaway slaves, and property for sale. Bill tried to calculate how much time had passed between when he'd given the duplicate original of John's will to the clerk for recording and when Absalom had gone into the office checking the board for notices. Had the clerk had the time to post the notice about John's will before Absalom came in? Did Absalom already know that John's plan was for Lucy and her family to be set free? "See anything good?" Moses asked his brother. "Nah, nothing worth the trouble up yet. But Smith was so busy with that dang telegraph, he said he had a whole stack of new notices to put up, but he still may not get till later today or tomorrow. Trying to decide now whether to wait here in town until the new notices get posted and save myself a trip back in the morning. Bill, why don't you and Moses come over to Smith's place? I'll buy you both a drink. Give me something to do before I go back to the clerk's office to check on new notices." "Yeah, Bill. Come on over for a drink with us," Moses chimed in. Bill shifted the flour from right shoulder to his left. "That's mighty nice of you, Ab. But you see this flour on my shoulder? It's getting plenty heavy, and put that shit down at Smith's long enough to have a drink. Take a load off," came the reply from Absalom. "Like I said, that's mighty nice of you, but if I don't get home to Sarah with this flour, I'm in a world of trouble. You know Sarah don't suffer no foolishness." "Oh, come on, William," insisted Moses. "You the man of your house. Woman can damn well tell you when to come home. She got you whooped up like a nigger. She say jump, you jump. She say come, you ask how fast. Ain't you the man?" William sighed, provoked, wanting to ignore the taunt, but the challenge to his manhood stung him. He knew what was important. He had to get back to the farm, help get the Suttons ready. They were due to get on the road day after tomorrow. He pictured his wife Sarah working on the farewell meal, her hands on her hips, her hair disheveled, wondering where the flour was she'd sent William to fetch. And part of him knew that Moses was right. He was whooped. Sarah did tell him what to do, how to do it, and how fast to get it done, but knowing that made William feel happy and comfortable, and spared him having to take all the tough decisions himself, even if he claimed and bore the burden of the decisions as his own. And in the instant when he weighed all these thoughts, Sarah's image faded from his mind, overtaken by the image of these Sutton boys laughing at him behind his back, telling anyone they could about how Bill Adams couldn't take a step without asking permission from his woman. What kind of real man didn't have enough control over his house and home he couldn't stop for a drink without worrying about some woman might think when he got home? The beer was warm, but still it quenched William's throat as he sat at the little table with Absalom and Moses in Smith's saloon. For the first round, the conversation rambled through the topics of the day, more talk about the opportunities waiting in Florida if you had just a little money and the gumption to take advantage of it. Soon they'd run the free niggers out, and there'd be plenty of room for decent white folk to go make good on all that land. Once the free niggers and Indians were gone or dead, it would be safe to bring down slaves and keep 'em breeding to drain the swamps and make that Florida land useful. There'd been some good cultivation of orange and lemon groves, even though cotton didn't do well in all the dampness, and if the right speculators hit it right, there was a fortune to be made throughout East and West Florida. William felt obliged to offer to pay for the second round, remembering as he ordered it that he had extra cash in hand from the sale of the last of John's cattle. He knew John would have mixed feelings about his money being spent on those brothers of his. Towards the end, John said things to William. Things about families and how complicated they could be. John's feelings about his own siblings had been a swirl of confusion. John's memory of old times was strong. They were his brothers, after all. As the eldest, John had been there when each of them had come along, and they'd looked up to John and respected him. That is, until John had made it clear to all of them that Lucy wasn't just a nigger wench for breeding, and that he had no intention of sorting his children into categories as field hands or house niggers, ready to be commoditized and converted into cash that he could use to buy more land or slaves. And despite his brother's rejection of John's sick and unnatural ideas about mixing up the races for anything but commerce and agriculture, John had still hoped, even to the very end, that his brothers could see the importance of blood. The blood that tied them together as brothers, yes, but at the same time the blood that made him more than an owner, but rather a father to Easter and Joel and Jack, who was given John's own name, and Martha and Mahala and Sarah, his sweet Sarah, who more than all the rest had a strange glow that came from someplace inside that made the beauty of her face sparkle with some extra magic. And the little ones, Benjamin, and David, who carried John's next oldest brother and his father's name. They were all John's blood, connected with a bond even stronger than the consanguine connection with his brothers. By the third round, the sun was beginning to set, and William wondered if Smith, the clerk, might have closed up by now, so Absalom would still have to wait until the next time he came to town to check for notices, so that John's instructions to free Lucy and her family would not be known until they were well on their way to Savannah for the packet to New Orleans, or out on the Federal Road, or better yet, all the way in Ohio or somewhere. Old Smith set the 3 fresh mugs of frothy beer on the table. "So, Bill," Absalom said, "what are you gonna do with all those niggers?" "I think he ought to sell a lot of 'em," said Moses. "Bring in a pretty penny." "Well, Ab," Bill said, "I think that's up to me." The beer had loosened William's reserve. "You're just asking a question," Moses said. "Just a friendly question. After all, if things had been different, those niggers would have been ours. I know I'd sell 'em and buy some land, probably down in Florida or maybe here in Ware County." William took a sip of his beer. "I don't mean to be rude, and I can't speak for anybody but me. I can't tell you why John left the Negroes to me, but he did, and what I do with them is my business. Ain't no changing that, and I ain't made up my mind yet." "But they gonna eat you out of house and home," Absalom said. "You know you need to sell some of 'em, even if you aim to keep the rest. I can make you a good deal on the oldest buck. I don't need 2. Probably a good idea to separate 'em anyhow, so they don't go on getting some wild ideas about nigger freedom. 'Cause that don't work around here. I'm militia see to that. If you do sell one of them wenches, you let me know," Moses said. "Shad already done claimed that pretty one, that Sarah. But whatever he offer you, I'll do him better." "Well," William said, heat rising in his chest and taking a last sip of his beer, "I appreciate y'all's thoughts. And don't take this the wrong way, but I don't see what I do with them is really in your business. Or yours, for that matter. Ab, I ain't right decided what I'm going to do. But y'all will be the first to know when I do make up my mind." And he said this, William braced himself for more probing and provocation. "Shit!" Absalom interjected, throwing a coin on the table and rising to leave. "I got to get back over to the clerk's office. Nearly forgot I'm supposed to be checking for new notices." William saw his chance and, putting a gold coin on the table, picked up the sack of flour at his feet. "Well, you go on and handle your business. I got to get this flour back to the farm." William nodded at Absalom and Moses as he watched Absalom scrambling out the door and across the street, William hoping that the clerk's office would be closed already. William loaded the flour onto his horse, and before he mounted, he looked over his shoulder and saw Absalom, with Moses behind him, knocking at the locked clerk's door. He didn't wait to see if the door opened or if it did, whether the clerk Smith had gotten around to posting a notice about John's will that would tell the world that all of John's slaves, all of his family, were to be set free. He dug his spurs into the little roan mare's side and took off for his farm at a gallop. That's all I want to say.
That's it. Now let's look at it. Now you go back and look at it. And then you can edit it. You got to put it, you can download it into the iMovie so you can edit those mistakes.
You know what?
What?